I want to talk a little bit about how the Rings of Power has already ruined Gandalf. All right. So obviously, because they did not. So the news is the Rings of Power season 2 has the rights to not only Gandalf but all 5 of the uh,
Wizards
wizards that came to Middle Earth during the end of the Second Age or the beginning of the Third Age. And they were sent directly by AU and the Valar. What wizards are essentially are Maiar, which is they are the apprentices to the Valar. The Valar are like the high angels to AU or Iluvatar, right? For the world of, and Iluvatar is the god of the Lord of the Rings universe. He created these high angels, which are called the Valar, and some of them stayed in this heavenly, place with Iluvatar, and some of them went to it's the place in the West, the place across the sea that the shows in the movie describes. It's like the heaven place on earth, if you will, for the world. And and a lot of the Valar stay there, right? The Valar are the angelic beings that are on earth that literally run it as kings, but they never came to Middle Earth, right? Morgoth, who is the master, if you will, to Sauron. So Morgoth was one of the Valar. He's like the Satan character of this story, where he was a Valar, he became corrupted. So with all that said, the Maiar are the apprentices or the servants of the high angels that are the Valar, right? So they are in some ways also angelic beings, but they were created for as lower angels, and a lot of them
so
came
these are
to
just the history of the wizards.
Yeah, and so what happened was when Sauron started, after there was a big war with Sauron and some of the other Maiar and the elves and everybody and men, and he basically his power was diminished, and they thought in the Second Age, and they thought that, or the end of the First Age or something, or the Second Age or whatever. It's a long history with a lot of characters. But the Maiar, 5 of the Maiar, were sent to Middle Earth not as warriors, but rather, if you will, prophets, almost prophets, to sway and to lead the people, the elves, the men, the dwarves, in the direction as protection against the spirit of Sauron that they believe lingers, right?
I don't mean to cut you off on your history, but the only people who are interested in this history lesson are the hardcore Lord of the Rings fans.
Listen, I know 100% that
the hardcore fans hate this show. They hate this show. I'm talking about Rings of Power. I'm not talking about this podcast specifically.
Right.
You're the hardcore fans who are interested in the history things. Why is Amazon trying to do this high lore history thing and
not do it justice?
Not do it justice, but also the fans that are actually interested in that.
Well, that's a freaking good question. That's a freaking good question. So to get to the crux of it, Gandalf in the books was described as very wise. He had mastered the art of patience and kindness as a Maiar angelic being, and he served under the head of the Valar, right? The king of the Valar, who lives across the sea. In Valinor is the name of the city that's over there. So he is well connected, and he didn't want to be sent to Middle Earth because he was worried that he wouldn't be able to stop Sauron. And they actually chose to say that makes you the perfect candidate to be able to, like the fact that you're not eager to go fight Sauron, that makes you a good candidate. So him as well as four others were sent, and they when they arrived, they took the being of old wise men. That's
Yeah.
why they appear old. Um, and Gandalf's, I think it's like Orlin or Arlen was his name as a Maiar, and he received the name Gandalf from the men of Middle Earth. The name
Yeah.
Mithrandian he got from the
The
elves.
wandered one.
Um,
Yeah.
and the reason Gandalf particularly was considered a wanderer was because all the other Maiar wizards became made a dwelling place for themselves, but Gandalf never did. He wandered around Middle Earth for thousands of years. The big thing that the Rings of Power got wrong was that why they ruined it. Well, first off, we'll talk about if we think that the character, the wizard that showed up, is indeed Gandalf based on the
Yeah.
show, but because they didn't confirm it.
They didn't confirm it
But
yet. We'll see.
we'll discuss that once I finish this. If the character is Gandalf, let's see how they ruined it. So first off, Gandalf was wise,
Hmm.
and they brought him to Middle Earth in a meteor. You know what I mean? As this stupid person who didn't know who he was. You know,
Yeah.
he didn't even know how to speak. Like he had to be taught. That's already kind of a really stupid creative decision that does not fit with the character of Gandalf at all. Because he didn't lose his personhood or his purpose when he came to Middle Earth. He didn't have
No.
amnesia. I will say there, if you want to send him in a meteor, there's maybe some room for that because the books, I don't believe, describe the nature in which they came to Middle Earth. Um, but the other big thing they got wrong, if this character is indeed Gandalf, is Gandalf came around the year 1000 of the Third Age. The show
Yeah.
takes place at the end of the Second Age. So if
So,
it is at the very end of the Second Age that this is indeed Gandalf showing up, then you're about 1,000 years off. You know what I mean?
so it definitely probably isn't Gandalf.
Well, the problem is they so in the show that's just a couple reasons. So he shouldn't have lost his personhood. He can't he they brought him in at the wrong time. And the first off, the hobbits or the Harfoots, they
Yeah.
didn't even show up on the map till the beginning of the Third Age. So the fact that we have Hobbit-like characters in the Second Age at all is not a
Hmm.
part of source material at all. They were not there during the Second Age. There's no record
No.
of them for men or elven history until the Third Age. So it's
I
silly
mean,
that we
clearly
would
they're
add
messing up
them.
the timeline here to give us characters that they think are beloved and wanting to
Yes, because they're
come in
trying
there
to
like, oh,
capitalize.
the Harfoots, the Hobbit, may create Harfoot characters. You
And
love the
let's bring
Gandalf,
Gandalf,
so let's bring him into it. You love Arwen, or no, wrong character. My names are getting
Here,
mixed up.
the
Gladriel.
Galadriel, yeah. And well, Galadriel
Um,
was there during the Second Age, but she
she
wasn't
was,
doing
but she
during the
also
Second Age.
no,
She was a
she
queen. She wasn't the
yes,
freaking. She wasn't a warrior going out to war and hunting Sauron. Um,
yeah. Which
so
so their timeline is so messed up here.
it is.
It's almost like we're saying like, Adam came after, you know, the cross.
Yeah, sort of. That's a funny thing to say, but yeah, you're kind of right. And and actually, when Sauron went into hiding, he wasn't discovered until the Third Age, and actually, it lines up more with the Hobbits that Peter Jackson made,
Yeah.
where Dol Guldur, that tower
Oh yeah.
in Mirkwood, I believe, that was where Sauron was hiding. And they didn't know if it was Sauron. It was a dark, and he wasn't come out till the Third Age. So it's really freaking silly. Maybe the show will somehow stick to the book, and in the next season or the third season, however many they get,
They'll
they'll
fix it.
they'll place Sauron
Mhm.
back into hiding in Dol Guldur or something. I don't know, but apparently, so they've from the Tolkien estate, the Amazon has received the rights to the three wizards that came from Valar, or from the sent by the Valar to Middle
Yeah.
Earth. So now they can include them in the story. And there's debates on, is the wizard in the story one of the two blue wizards? Is it Radagast? Is it Saruman? Or is it indeed Gandalf? And I'm pretty sure with the heavy hinting at the end of the show with the follow your nose and all that stuff,
Yeah.
that's Gandalf. And I don't
It
think
has to
they're
be.
clever enough. If you take the whole show and say, was anything they did clever? The storytelling was atrocious. It didn't follow any of the lore, and they just didn't even tell a coherent story across the board
The
with the
only
first, second, and third act.
Now, the only thing that I kind of was like, oh, this is kind of interesting and got me thinking, and it definitely had holes in it also and things I didn't like, but was the story more of the dwarfs and finding um, the Nethril.
It wasn't bad because that's not
That was
recorded,
the
you
portion that I
know?
kind of liked, and I'm like, even though they're throwing the dwarf women in there, and we clearly know there ain't no dwarf women.
Well, there is a dwarf women. They just have beards.
Yeah,
They're
they.
mistaken for men by other people of Middle Earth, these women.
Mhm.
That's the
uh,
joke, and that's the reality.
they um they kind of got a few things messed up, but that was the interesting story about season
You're
one.
right.
And people might hate me just for even saying that,
No,
but
I think that is truly the consensus. Is the only thing interesting about among Lord of the Rings fans on the internet, because I've watched a lot of stuff on this. The
yeah,
consensus that I've seen more times than not is that the dwarf specific characters,
yeah,
um, with their mining and with their world in under the mountains and in their and their
under the
kingdoms there,
trees, and
that
then
was the most interesting part of the story. And in fact, the dwarf characters, even though they got a lot of the details for women dwarfs wrong, that the dwarf characters are the most engaging part of the series. And then the relationship um, with the dwarf guy, I think it's uh, they what's the name? Darren? No. Well, the lead dwarf character, man, and his
yeah,
relationship
the king, yeah,
with Elrond. Um,
yeah,
that a lot of people felt like that was a an okay relationship, but it doesn't make sense because they obviously, based on where Elrond started in the story and where he got to the dwarves, it would have been like a long travel period of time to get to even there. So there's so many issues in around every corner with the Rings of Power, and the dwarves are the only interesting part of the story.
yeah. I don't know how they're going to do it, but I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed of the Tolkien estate for giving them the rights. I'm
So
ashamed
this is
of
the
everything they've done, and I'm ashamed.
I think both Tolkien and his son, who took over the Tolkien estate after him, would be ashamed because I believe this is the grandson to Tolkien who's currently running the estate, and he's kind of on the woke train personally. You know what I mean? He's kind of on this
I mean, it
stupid
makes
freaking.
sense that a younger generation, 3 generations away, is like, I don't really know. I never really knew Tolkien,
He's
so
capitalizing on not only his grandfather and his father's hard
mhm,
work for this beloved story, but capitalizing on the fan base of the work of his predecessors to make
yeah.
money for himself. That's the point of this, right? He doesn't really care about the story that his family created because it's going to make him a lot of money. That's so
Do
freaking
you?
stupid.
I'm just trying to put myself and give him the benefit of the doubt because I don't
I
know.
don't think at this
Well,
point you
I'm not. I
should.
don't know if it's one specific person
After
that's
seeing
doing
the
it
first
also.
season of the Rings of Power, and then to say, all right, you can have the rights also to these three wizard characters.
Well, no, no.
That's so
Let me just
stupid.
give the benefit of the doubt. Let me give the benefit of the doubt here.
Go ahead and
So
try.
I don't know if it's even one person. We're kind of saying, oh, his grandson. But let's say it's a bunch of people, but this is their mindset of like, we want to create our own story, and we have the rights to this Lord of the Rings world, Middle Earth. We have the rights to Middle Earth.
Well, they have the rights to the appendices and a few other writings. They don't have the rights to the Silmarillion or the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings books because that's owned by Warner Brothers for
Well,
movies anyway.
okay.
You know.
But they have enough to say like, this was our family's story, or this is my grandfather's story. I'm just going to put it in one person perspective.
Okay.
But he's been long gone, so yes, it's beloved, but I also want to create my own story here. I want to create a legacy for myself and I'm a storyteller in my own sense. I might not be a great one, but I'm a
So
storyteller in my sense.
why
So
wouldn't, if you're a true storyteller, write your own fantasy? Don't bastardize your grandfather's. You know. That's true. He's making money for himself off the backs and the care that his grandfather and father took for this story. And
I guess.
it is, because if you actually want to be like, make your own story, leave your grandfather's story out of it, because there's a huge fan base that loves this, knows the lore, understands the time and place and the important moments of these characters and why they're significant. And they're just saying, we have barely any rights to the source material, so we're just going to take names of people
Mm,
and write our own story and change the history of Middle Earth. That's not good. That's
no,
terrible.
no.
And so
I
what do you
don't know.
think the
I'm getting a little
likelihood
upset.
is?
Do we have anything else
Listen,
about the
I,
wizards?
what's the likelihood that this is indeed Gandalf? Because I think it's too attractive for them, now that they have the rights to Gandalf, to not make him Gandalf. And I believe that's what they wanted initially anyway. I don't think this is one of the blue wizards. I don't think they could brush it off and say, well, he came during the Second Age, because not all the wizards came at the same time. You know what I mean?
This is definitely Gandalf.
I think so too. I don't think they're clever enough to try to build that out.